Fix bayonets! They're coming again!
That's how Color Sergeant Frank Bourne rallied his men as 4,000 Zulu warriors launched their 7th assault on January 22, 1879. Just hours after their stunning victory at Isandlwana, a Zulu impi had descended on the tiny mission station at Rorke's Drift. 150 British and colonial soldiers faced impossible odds. What happened next became the stuff of legend. While the main Zulu army was destroying Lord Chelmsford's column at Isandlwana, Prince Dabulamanzi Kampande led 4,000 warriors toward the Buffalo River. Their target, the mission station and supply depot at Rorke's Drift. The station was named after James Rorke, an Irish trader who had established a drift, river crossing there in the 1840s. By 1879, it served as a hospital and supply base for British forces operating in Zululand. Lieutenant John Chard of the Royal Engineers commanded the tiny garrison. He had no idea that the largest military disaster in British colonial history had just occurred 12 miles away. The collision at Rorke's Drift would produce the complete opposite outcome. If you're enjoying this detailed military analysis, subscribe for more historic battle breakdowns. Rorke's Drift consisted of 2 stone buildings connected by a stone wall. The mission house, converted to a hospital. The storehouse, containing ammunition and supplies. A kraal, cattle enclosure, behind the buildings. At 3:30 p.m. on January 22nd, Lieutenant Chard commanded approximately 150 men, Company B, 2nd Battalion, 24th Regiment of Foot, around 80 men. 35 sick and wounded soldiers. In the hospital, colonial volunteers, including Natal Native Contingent Commissary Officer James Dalton. The garrison's weapons were standard issue. Martini Henry rifles, 20,000 rounds of ammunition, no artillery. Meanwhile, Prince Dabulamanzi was making a fateful decision. King Cetshwayo had specifically ordered his forces not to cross into British territory. But the prince, eager to share in the glory of Isandlwana, decided to attack the mission station. This violation of orders would have significant consequences. The 4,000 warriors approaching Rorke's Drift were primarily from the Uthulwana and Indluyengwe regiments. These were experienced fighters, but they had not participated in the morning's victory. They were eager to wash their spears in enemy blood. 3:15 p.m., Lieutenant Gert Adendorf arrived with shocking news.
Isandlwana has fallen. The Zulus are coming!
Chard faced an immediate decision: evacuate or defend. Commissary Dalton argued for defense.
We'll never outrun them with the wounded.
3:30 p.m. The decision was made. They would fight, but first they needed fortifications. The next 90 minutes were crucial. Soldiers frantically constructed barricades using mealie bags, corn sacks, stacked 4 feet high, biscuit boxes as connecting walls, overturned wagons to block gaps. The defensive perimeter enclosed both buildings and part of the kraal. But even with these preparations, the position had serious weaknesses. The hospital was isolated from the main defense. High ground overlooked the compound. Limited fields of fire. No escape route if overwhelmed. 5 p.m. Zulu scouts appeared on the hills surrounding the station. Black as hell and thick as grass, reported Private Frederick Hitch. The main force was clearly visible. Thousands of warriors in disciplined formation. This wasn't going to be a quick raid. 4:20 p.m. The attack begins. The Zulu advance was methodical and coordinated. Warriors used the natural terrain, rocks, anthills, and the garden terraces, for cover. They moved in short rushes, always maintaining formation. The first assault targeted the hospital building. Private John Williams and his comrades found themselves cut off from the main defense. We could hear the Zulus breaking down the doors, Williams later recalled. Room by room, The hospital defenders fought a desperate retreat. They punched holes through interior walls, carrying wounded patients from room to room. Meanwhile, the main perimeter came under intense pressure. Some Zulu warriors carried captured Martini Henry rifles from Isandlwana, but most were poorly trained with these weapons and largely ineffective compared to the disciplined British marksmen. The warriors advanced to within 30 yards before British volleys forced them back. Lieutenant Chard moved constantly along the line, directing fire and encouraging his men. Color Sergeant Bourne controlled ammunition distribution with iron discipline. "Make every shot count, lads," he shouted above the din of battle. The hospital became a separate battlefield. Private John Williams and Private Joseph Williams, no relation, led the evacuation of patients. They smashed through walls with bayonets and rifle butts. Patient by patient, they moved the wounded to safety. "We could smell the smoke as they fired the thatch," Private John Williams reported. The Zulus had set the roof ablaze. In the chaos, some remarkable individual actions took place. Private Henry Hook, not the malingering drunkard of cinema, but a devout Methodist and model soldier, carried wounded men to safety while defending doorways. Private Waters defended a doorway single-handedly, while others evacuated patients. Surgeon Reynolds treated wounded men while rifle fire cracked around him. By 6 p.m., the hospital was lost. But incredibly, all but 2 of the patients had been successfully evacuated to the storehouse. This tactical withdrawal under fire demonstrated extraordinary discipline and courage. As darkness fell, the Zulus changed tactics. They began probing attacks from multiple directions. The British had contracted their perimeter to just the storehouse and a small area in front. Mealie bags and biscuit boxes formed a chest-high wall. The night battle was fought at close quarters. "You could see their faces in the muzzle flashes," recalled Private Grant. Zulu warriors would suddenly appear at the barricade, only to be met with bayonet thrusts. The defenders organized into shifts. Half the men fired while others rested. Ammunition carriers moved constantly along the line. Wounded men who could still fight took positions at loopholes. Lieutenant Chard's leadership was crucial during these dark hours. He personally led counterattacks to retake sections of the perimeter. Color Sergeant Bourne seemed to be everywhere at once. "He was worth 50 men that night," one survivor later said. The Zulus launched 7 major assaults between sunset and midnight. Each attack was repulsed, but the British were running low on ammunition. "We were down to our last few rounds," reported Acting Assistant Commissary Dunn. At some point during the night, the men began singing, not the cinematic Men of Harlech, but their actual regimental song, the Warwickshire Lad, their voices rising defiantly above the sound of battle. 4 a.m., the firing gradually subsided. As dawn broke, the defenders could see Zulu forces withdrawing to the hills. But were they really leaving or preparing for a final assault? 6 a.m. Lord Chelmsford's relief column appeared on the horizon. The Zulus melted away into the landscape. The siege was over. The cost had been severe on both sides. British casualties: 17 killed, 15 wounded. Zulu casualties: 351 confirmed dead, many more wounded. But the strategic impact was enormous. While Isandlwana had shocked the British Empire, Rorke's drift restored confidence. The tiny garrison had achieved something remarkable. They had held their ground against overwhelming odds of nearly 27 to 1. What made the defense successful? First, leadership under pressure. Chard and Bourne maintained discipline and coordination throughout. Second, effective use of terrain. The stone buildings provided anchor points for the defense. Third, ammunition discipline. Every shot was carefully aimed and accounted for. Fourth, unit cohesion. The men fought as a team, not individuals. Fifth, tactical flexibility. The defenders adapted their perimeter as circumstances changed. From the Zulu perspective, what went wrong? Strategic disadvantage. Attacking fortified positions negated their mobility advantage. Tactical limitations. The Horns formation was ineffective against prepared defenses. Leadership constraints. Prince de Bulamanzi was operating against his king's orders. Timing issues. The attack came after a full day of fighting at Isandlwana. Weapon limitations. While some warriors carried captured Martini Henry rifles, they lacked proper training with these weapons and were largely ineffective against disciplined riflemen in prepared positions. The contrast with Isandlwana is instructive. At Isandlwana, the Zulus used mobility and superior numbers in open terrain. At Rorke's Drift, the British used prepared positions and concentrated firepower. Both battles demonstrated that tactical advantages often trump technological superiority. News of Rorke's Drift reached London alongside reports of Isandlwana. The press, desperate for good news after the disaster, lionized the defenders. "The defense of Rorke's Drift will live forever in military annals," declared the Times. Queen Victoria authorized an unprecedented 11 Victoria Crosses, the highest award for valor. Recipients included Lieutenant John Chard, Color Sergeant Frank Bourne, Private Frederick Hitch, Private John Williams, Private Joseph Williams, Surgeon James Reynolds, Private Henry Hook, Corporal William Allen, Private Frederick Hitch, Private Robert Jones, Private William Jones. The Zulu perspective was more complex. Prince de Bulamanzi faced criticism for violating King Cetshwayo's orders. The attack had gained nothing strategically, while costing hundreds of lives. Worse, it had given the British a propaganda victory to offset Isandlwana. "The prince should have stayed on his own side of the river," one Zulu veteran later commented. Rorke's Drift demonstrated several key military principles. Defensive advantage. Prepared positions multiply combat effectiveness. Leadership matters. Officer competence directly impacts outcomes. Training pays off. Disciplined troops perform better under extreme stress. Morale is crucial. Belief in victory can overcome material disadvantages. The battle influenced British military thinking. Fortification doctrine was revised to emphasize all-around defense. Small unit leadership training received increased emphasis. The importance of ammunition supply was reinforced. Colonial garrison tactics were completely overhauled. For the Zulu military system, Rorke's Drift revealed limitations. Traditional tactics were ineffective against fortified positions. The lack of artillery made siege warfare impossible. Operating beyond traditional territory reduced tactical flexibility. These lessons would influence the remainder of the Anglo-Zulu War. Rorke's Drift became one of the most celebrated actions in British military history. But like many famous battles, legend sometimes obscures reality. The historical facts. The defenders were vastly outnumbered. True, 4,000 versus 150. They fought through the night for over 12 hours, documented. Many expected to die, supported by contemporary accounts. 11 Victoria Crosses were awarded, unprecedented for a single action. The cinematic myths. The singing of Men of Harlech comes from the 1964 film Zulu. The actual regimental song was The Warwickshire Lad. Characters like Henry Hook were misrepresented. He was actually a model soldier and devout Methodist, not a drunkard. Many dramatic details were Hollywood embellishments. The reality was complex. The Zulu attack lacked the coordination seen at Isandlwana. Many warriors were exhausted from the day's earlier fighting. The British had significant advantages in weapons, position, and training. Prince de Bulamanzi's tactical leadership was hampered by operating against orders. This doesn't diminish the achievement. 150 men holding off 4,000 attackers remains an extraordinary feat. The courage displayed by both sides deserves recognition. As one Zulu veteran said years later, "The Redcoats fought like lions that night." Today, Rorke's Drift is preserved as a museum and battlefield site. The stone buildings still stand, marked by bullet holes and scorch marks. Visitors can walk the perimeter and understand the tactical situation. Both British and Zulu perspectives are presented with historical accuracy. The battle's influence on popular culture has been enormous. The 1964 film Zulu introduced the story to millions worldwide. While Hollywood took liberties with historical details, it captured the essence of the action. Military academies still study the defense as a case study in small unit leadership. The lessons remain relevant to modern warfare. Small, well-trained units can achieve disproportionate results. Defensive positions force attackers into unfavorable tactical situations. Leadership and morale often matter more than numbers. Preparation and training pay dividends under pressure. The Anglo-Zulu War continued for 5 more months after these epic encounters. The British learned from both Isandlwana and Rorke's Drift. Their next major engagement would incorporate these lessons. At Ulundi in July 1879, Lord Chelmsford would finally get his decisive battle. That story of adaptation, revenge, and the final destruction of Zulu military power deserves its own detailed analysis. The Battle of Rorke's Drift proved that courage and leadership can overcome overwhelming odds. It demonstrated the power of defensive tactics when properly applied. Both the British defenders and Zulu attackers displayed remarkable bravery. The real lesson isn't about imperial conquest or resistance. It's about how ordinary people respond to extraordinary circumstances. When faced with impossible odds, character matters more than weapons. Leadership, training, and unit cohesion determine survival. These principles apply to any high-stakes situation, military or otherwise. Check our playlist for more detailed battle analyses, and let us know which aspect of the defense impressed you most. Thanks for watching. Subscribe so you don't miss the final battle at Ulundi.